Combine's going on in Indy. Big story of the day yesterday, too, from the LSU perspective. Of course, Thad Moss found out has that Jones fracture in his foot, so he's not going to participate at the Combine. Mike D with us yesterday said he didn't think that's going to affect his draft status at all. He'll still be in that 3 to 5 range. Also, of course, probably the biggest story was Justin Jefferson running a 4.44. If there was any question, and that happened near the end of our show, but if there was any question about Jefferson that people had coming in, it was his straight line speed. Did he have elite straight line speed? As if they didn't watch the end of the LSU-Texas game last year. But he's answered that now running a 4.44. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, we had Mo Wells on the show, and Mo ran track at LSU. He's a strength and conditioning coach. He had been at Traction. He's now at IMG down in Bradenton, Florida, where a lot of the LSU guys are training, and Mo had been working with Jefferson. There's actually video of Mo and Jefferson there before he ran the 40 yesterday, but it's very clear that they had worked on it, perfected that, and Justin Jefferson made himself a ton of money because if there was any question about whether or not he would be a first-round pick, that got answered by having now elite top-end speed because there is no question any longer about Justin Jefferson. Two other guys that are really interesting in this draft from LSU are Grant Delpit and Kristian Fulton because both at times had been considered first-round locks. And now there's a little bit of a question surrounding both. Delpit, namely, because of the injuries. So Delpit was on with the NFL Network there at the Combine today and said he's not going to do any drills. Here's Delpit explaining why he's not going to do drills at the Combine.
I played through a high ankle sprain for most of the season, and I'm really just getting over it right now. This extra month, I prorated until April 3rd, so it gives me a lot of time to get to 100%, and that's just trying to perform my best abilities.
Played most of the season with a high ankle sprain. Understand LSU's season ended 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks of doing nothing. 6 weeks of healing, recovering, treatment, and he's still not ready. One more. I'm going to follow up in a second. One more from Delpit, though, on what he can do at the Combine.
Showing my football smarts, just proving that I'm the best safety in this draft. Talking to the coaches, just getting on their good side, and just really being myself. And passing the medicals, of course. That's probably the top two things I'm trying to do here.
This was something LSU coaches did not want out, and Delpit did not want largely publicized this year throughout the course of the season. Now we're going to hear that story. And now NFL scouts and GMs and coaches are going to hear that story as well. The fact that for everyone who crapped on Grant Delpit this year for regressing or not tackling or anything like that, now you know. You're still that man played the majority of the season with an NFL first-round future, played the majority of the season on a bum ankle and still won the Thorpe Award and was still one of the best defensive backs in college football. There were times where clearly he wasn't right. We can look at the second half against Ole Miss, and it's obvious. But there were a lot of times when Grant Delpit looked like a straight baller. You can go look at the Mississippi State game. You can go look at the Auburn game, at the Alabama game. He elevated his play at times when he needed to, chose his spots when he needed to burst, and he did. And there is no question that when NFL teams sit down with Grant Delpit, talk to him, understand what happened this year, it's going to explain a lot of the deficiencies on film this year, and then he's going to be right physically, and someone is going to use a high first-round pick on him. This is what happened with Leonard in 2016 when he battled that ankle injury all year. Injured in fall camp, sat him, got him ready for that game against Wisconsin and Lambeau, re-injured it, and then the whole year it was just a constant effort to try to get over that ankle injury, and it just never happened. And then there were so many questions about Leonard. Remember, he sat out of the bowl game, and everyone had all these concerns about Fournette. If he was a team guy, was he injury prone, on and on. And he goes to the Combine, he runs a 4.5, and everyone's like, oh, okay, he was hurt. Same thing with Delpit. When Grant runs, when he works out with teams, they're going to see what made him the best defensive back in college football in 2018, and he's going to be a first-round draft pick. The other interesting one that I mentioned was Kristian Fulton. And Fulton's a guy that we've seen bounce in and out of round one. But, Kristian Fulton, talked about, can we play number 2, please? Brandon Fulton talked about going up against the best wide receivers in the SEC and how he fared.
Like you said, it's an NFL talent. I'm guaranteed that all of them will be in the NFL. So it's kind of got a foot into the league already. I would say not just on Saturday, but during the week. We have great coaches that coach them that's been in the league. So we're learning things that they learn in the NFL. And then put the credit to Coach Raymond. With us helping, giving us NFL techniques to use throughout my years.
Kristian Fulton talking a little bit about preparing for this opportunity. He, for me, is maybe the most interesting. That he's the guy that of all the guys in the draft from LSU could ride the elevator up or down. I think we all know Burrow is going to be a first rounder. We all know Jefferson now is going to be a first rounder. Delpit was going to be a first rounder either way. It's just a matter of where he fell in round 1. Guys like Chasson and Queen, they're not going to fall out of the top 40. Even if Chasson or Queen doesn't go in round 1, they'll go in the first 5 to 10 picks of round 2. Fulton is the one guy that I go, man, a team could absolutely be smitten with him. They could put on the tape and see that at times a year ago he was the best defensive back on the field, and someone could pluck him in round 1. Or he's a guy that, because of size or being overshadowed by Stingley or whatever he runs or works out, because of obviously the suspension, could see his value fall for whatever reason. We saw that with Darius Geis a few years ago. There was the word about him not being a team guy or whatever, and he fell down into round 2, and a lot of people had him projected as a first-round draft pick. So I think there's one guy among the top 6 that could go in round 1 from LSU. The one guy that might ride that escalator a little bit, it would be Fulton. I don't think there's any doubt that the other 5 go in the top 40 picks. If there's one that might fall, I think it would be Fulton. But the flip side of it is, aside from Jeffrey Okudah, who is sort of the consensus number 1 cornerback in this draft class, I don't think there isn't a clear-cut 2, and there could be a team that says Fulton's our guy, and they pluck him in the top half of round 1, and that wouldn't surprise me either. He's the guy that I think coming out of this weekend in Indy has the most to gain or lose, because he could make a team fall in love with him and be a top half of round 1 guy, or we could see Fulton see his stock drop coming out of this weekend. So big weekend for Kristian Fulton as well.